the one organization right now that is making a concerted effort, and I mean a real concerted effort, to clamp down on everything that we're doing, whether it's our channel, whether it's any of our friends' channels. And then it's the people at the very top who are espousing an anti-Israel message. The danger in the language that these powerful individuals use, if you saw the clip earlier today about Shabbos Kessenbaum, in reality, Kessenbaum, in terms of being on the totem pole, yes, he has influence, but I would not exactly say that he's very high up on the totem pole. Smash that like button if you haven't yet, guys. Jonathan Greenblatt at the ADL is one of the most dangerous people in political discourse today. And here's why.
Jonathan, can you comment on Nick Fuentes and what do you actually do that effectively can counter what he does?
First of all, two things. Who in the hell says Fuentes? And we're going to get to Nick shortly. Fuentes, that's how you pronounce his name. Now, Jen and audience, I want you to look very closely at the back of Mr. Greenblatt's head. I can't tell if he's got a tiny hat on or if his head is just shaped in such a weird way that it appears that he has something on his head, but there isn't actually anything there. Can somebody please clarify thoughts? He's got a little something on his head? I can't tell. Well, it could be both. But here's what he had to say.
And what are your expectations of the government to be critical of a person that has that kind of platform?
So for everyone's benefit, the question was, can I comment on Nick Fuentes and what he does, and what are you doing to counter him, and what's the government's role?
By the way, his second name is Joseph, a good Jewish name.
Nick Fuentes' second name is Joseph?
Yes.
Look, his last name is Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is a Hispanic person, okay? And he is an open, unapologetic, racist, homophobe, and more than anything, an anti-Semite. He's a toxic, disgusting person, and yet, thanks to X and social media, he's been incredibly effective at getting his message out there. I mean, social media is a super spreader of anti-Semitism and hate. And people like Nick Fuentes, they're like patient zero spreading this. And look, it didn't help us when candidate, or whatever you'd call him, former President Trump had him over for dinner, like at Mar-a-Lago a few years ago. And it doesn't help us that when given the opportunity, people in positions of power don't renounce this guy. Now look, to his credit, J.D. Vance has done that, but we have this challenge right now on the right, and it's like a good thing because there are bad voices who've been elevated. Like, look, Nick Fuentes is disgusting, Tucker Carlson is disgusting, Candace Owens is disgusting, and so on.
It's always those three. And you know why it's always those three, ladies and gentlemen? Because those three have the greatest impact on the social media discourse in this country away from the state of Israel. They're not going to mention others that are hovering. Now, why he chooses to mention Nick Fuentes when Fuentes, as we are going to see once again this evening, is obviously an op. It is pretty, it is conclusive at this point that it's Fuentes, it's Candace Owens, and it's Tucker Carlson. And those same people get mentioned over and over and over again. And the reason they get mentioned over and over and over again in a negative light is because they haven't gotten their mind right. And that's a big deal. And that's why Greenblatt mentions them incessantly, as he'll do a lot of others. They're not going to mention anyone else because pretty much everyone else, whether in conservative Inc. or in the Democratic sphere, are going to say the same thing. Now, I believe Greenblatt has a few more people to mention.
But there have been good people like Ted Cruz and Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin.
Three of the biggest Nazis this country has ever seen. Mark Levin, who is screaming his head off that we must go to war in Iran, Ben Shapiro, Ted Cruz, Ted I wear 4-inch lifts in my shoes Cruz. That's true, by the way.
Who are pushing back on these, Speaker Johnson, pushing back on these revolting lunatics. So to answer the question, I think the only way we are going to defeat the rising anti-Semitism on the right is from the right. I think the only way we're going to defeat the rising anti-Zionism on the left is by people on the left. So what I try to do at ADL, what we try to do, is to provide data, is to provide tools, is to step up, but often quietly behind the scenes. It doesn't help. I don't think it helps the Jewish people, and it doesn't disarm them when I go after Nick Fuentes or Hasan Piker, a revolting person.
So there you go. You got your one content creator in left politics that they really hate, and that is Hasan Piker, or Cenk's nephew, as they like to say as a reference. And the reason I believe they reference Hasan Piker is because his message has been extremely consistent against the state of Israel, and he's got a very large following. So when you have a large following and you go against the grain and you ultimately run the risk of becoming a, we'll just say, podcast statistic, well, then you get the wrath of somebody who truly has money and power at their disposal. And Greenblatt has a lot of it. Just as Kessenbaum said, I don't care if they think we run the banks. I don't care if they think we run Hollywood. I don't care if they think we have horns growing out of our heads. As long as we can have that power, no problem. And by the way, if you are anti-Semitic or have anti-Semitic thoughts, we're going to try to put you in prison. That's the next step. In case you were wondering how far they're willing to take this thing.
Hamas Piker. He's here in LA, and he's a.
I will say this, as much as I'm not into the nicknames and that shit, Hamas Piker, it's actually a good nickname. But hey, wear that with wear it as a badge of honor, as far as I'm concerned.
Just a putrid. It says horrible, slanderous things about Jews, about Zionists, about Israel,
and has a big platform.
Yeah, so you might not know Hasan Piker, but if your kids are watching video games, you better believe they do. Because on Twitch and on Steam, he's everywhere, let alone on YouTube and Insta. So anyways, long story short, we definitely are working a lot to try to get the platforms to kind of enforce their own terms of service so that
Did you hear what he just said? One more time.
So anyways, long story short, we definitely are working a lot to try to get the platforms to kind of enforce their own terms of service.
What he's really saying is we are threatening these platforms to do as they're told, and if they don't, we will make an example out of them. So their whole goal here isn't to combat the talking points of Hasan Piker, of Candace Owens, of Tucker Carlson, and even Nick Fuentes, or heck, even our little channel. No, the goal is to not actually convince you that the Zionist ideology is correct. It's stop talking negatively about the Zionist ideology. And if you don't, we will simply get you shut down. We are watching you from afar and nearby. He's not lying. Remember, Zionists, there is no line they won't cross. Laws do not apply to them. They are the chosen people. As you will see, you're going to really enjoy this live stream tonight. We've got a handful of exposés to get to. You're going to enjoy it. But this is a great example. This is a prime example of why the Zionist ideology must die and why we must unravel it from the clutches of our country, our government, and our citizenry. They're never going to stop. You think Greenblatt is going to stop? Again, the Samson option. They're psychopathic, insane individuals. Greenblatt's a bitch, but he's part of that contingent of psychopaths. Jonathan Greenblatt is paid in excess of $1 million a year to be the spokesperson for the ADL, which is anything but what the organization is for. You know, when you talk about, do you stand for the terms of service? Let me assure you that there are no bigger hypocrites when it comes to these nonprofit organizations than the Anti-Defamation League, the most hypocritical of them all. So if anyone knows about saying one thing and doing something completely different, it's this shithead right here.
So that we can pull down the most offensive hate speech or get them to do it. But I need people on the right to take down Tucker Carlson, so I'm trying to help Ted Cruz. I need people on the right to take down Nick Fuentes, so I'm trying to help people like Ben, and same thing on the left.
I do just want to say, when I talked in the sermon about the nuance of every human being and how we're all children, I didn't mean Nick Fuentes. I
didn't mean Nick Fuentes. You know, the problem with these guys is that they don't understand how unfunny they really are. And I wonder if the people in the room even laugh because they think it's funny or because they don't want him to feel bad that his joke landed flat. I don't know. But what I do know is that there is an inherent danger with these people. They want to surveil us all. And while we are under, I would think, totality surveillance at the highest levels of the NSA, I also think we should be very clear that the NSA and any of the alphabet agencies are doing business with the pro-Israel lobby. And that includes the ADL. They get to watch us. And so to the ADL, who I am sure has one of their lackeys watching our channel, I know you're trying to get us shut down. I know you're doing everything to suppress our message as you are doing to several other channels. And it's not going to stop us. We are going to keep coming. And we're going to keep fighting. Because even if we don't win, we're at least going to know we gave it everything we had. You will not beat us into submission. You will not put us down. And even if you do, we're taking you with us.